So welcome everyone to Dr. Kirk Adams' monthly live stream webinar, which I call Supercharge Your Bottom Line Through Disability Inclusion. Today I have a wonderful guest, Mai Ling Chan. If you could just say hello, Mai Ling, and I'll turn it over to you shortly.
Hello, everyone. I'm so happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
Great. And for those of you who don't know me, again, I'm Dr. Kirk Adams. I'm talking to you from my home office in Seattle, Washington. I'm the immediate past president and CEO of the American Foundation for the Blind, which was Helen Keller's organization. And I had the awe-inspiring opportunity to sit at her desk. I moved to New York City in 2016 to become president of AFB. Prior to that, I held those same leadership roles at the Lighthouse for the Blind here in Seattle, which is a social enterprise employing hundreds of blind and deafblind people in interesting businesses, including aerospace manufacturing for all the Boeing aircraft. I have a PhD in leadership and change from Antioch University, and I focused my dissertation work on employment. I did an ethnographic study of blind adults employed at major American corporations and interviewed a lot of really cool people working at a lot of companies whose names we all know. And I learned a lot from that experience about the factors that lead to successful employment for people who are blind and the barriers that still remain. So we all have lots of work to do together to make the world an equitable place where everyone has the equal opportunity to thrive. And I do that by focusing on employment. I work with companies to help them accelerate inclusion of people with disabilities in their workforce. I support disabled entrepreneurs in their entrepreneurial journeys. I help small nonprofits scale beyond the founder stage. And in general, I look for fun, innovative, high impact projects that will accelerate inclusion of people with disabilities in our world. And I like to work with people I like. And Mai Ling is one of those people. We were introduced quite some time ago, and I've stayed in very close contact as she has developed her strategies and what she's bringing to the world to accelerate inclusion and equity and social justice and all of those good things. So would really like to spend the bulk of our time hearing from you, Mai Ling. I'll reserve the right to pop in and ask some clarifying questions, but would love to hear about your journey so far, your background, what energizes you and motivates you around disability inclusion, maybe some of the things you've tried, some of the things that have worked well, some of the things that you learned from, and where you're at now with ELN, Exceptional Leaders Network, which I'm privileged and proud to be part of, and then what your vision of the future is. So I'm happy to hand you the talking stick. One little comment. I've learned a lot from Mai Ling. She comes as a totally blind person myself since age 5. I tend to look for information about blindness and visual impairment and assistive technologies that support people with visual impairment to help us be in fewer disabling situations through use of technology. But I was on a call with Mai Ling earlier in the week where her guest speaker was using augmentative communication technology, which I've had some exposure to, but really learning a lot more about because of my association with Mai Ling. So always something new to learn, and that's what we're here for today. For those of you who are with us live, we'll provide ample time for question and answer. And for those of you who are viewing the archived recording, we will let you know how to get in touch with both of us. So Mai Ling, the floor is yours.
Excellent. Thank you again. I'm so excited to be able to be on the show with you. And I will tell our listeners that I do have ADHD and I have my talking points in front of me. But if I start to become a runaway guest, which is a podcast guest that just goes on and on. Please jump in, Dr. Adams.
Okay.
Okay, great.
I can't imagine me wanting to stop you from saying anything, but I will take that. I will take that under advisement.
You never know. But I also have learned a lot from Dr. Adams, and we are currently working on the software that I am using for the Exceptional Leaders Network, which he just joined with me, because there isn't a seamless interface with the JAWS screen reader. And so we're having some issues with accessing different areas, and I don't use one. And so this has been a really interesting journey for me to be a bridge between a very important user, which is, one of my members, and the tech team. And so this has been back and forth with emails. And so I'm really hopeful that this company is going to embrace, the WCAG requirements. And I'm looking forward to moving through this process together. And of course, I am name dropping Dr. Adams, and that he was the former founder and president of the Blind Association. And, hello, we've got somebody very important here, in addition to any other future users who maybe they're already trying to use the software and just not saying anything. So we're getting some good traction. So I just wanted to share that with your listeners. You're muted.
Well, take us back to your girlhood in New Jersey. Let's go way
Ooh,
back.
I love that. Yes. So I'm a Jersey girl who's stuck in the desert looking for my beach. That's what I've been saying. It's wild. I've been here 24 years now in the desert. I originally am from Keyport, New Jersey, a small little sailboat town, which is a beautiful area in Monmouth County. And I did not know how good I had it, because really, 20 minutes and I'm at any beach. It was just crazy. And then I could also drive into New York City. And so I grew up seeing a lot of the shows. Les Mis, I saw probably 3 or 4 times. I saw the Christmas ones. I saw the Rockettes. I've been to Rockefeller Center. Yeah, all of that. And then I came out to Arizona and I was like, what? It was like scratching a record. So I've learned a lot, and I've learned to really just treasure, being a New Jersey youngin, I would say, going to the beaches and going to the Garden State Art Center, which is an open amphitheater where you could hear watch the concerts, and you were so close to the the singers and the performers. It's just incredible. So a lot of things have changed. Obviously, I've been out now for 26 years, but my connections and my culture is still very East Coast, and people out here will be like, I like you, May. You're pretty direct. You're pretty blunt. And I was like, oh, that's the Jersey girl talking.
Did you become aware of people with impairments, disabilities, and dynamics around disability as a young person?
It's a great question. So I grew up in a very small town. 1 square mile was the town of Keyport. It still is. And I had exposure to one cousin, so actually a friend's cousin, who had a lot of, I believe it was mental disability. And I don't know, because I was so young then. And he was much bigger than me. So I'm a tiny girl. I'm only like barely 5 feet now. And he was a big, big kid. And there was a lot of sound and chaos coming from the other rooms. And I happened to be sitting next to him. He reached out and hit me. Didn't mean to, it was a sensory overload, all that kind of stuff that you don't know about. And so after that, being a young kid, I was always scared, afraid, putting this in quotes, of people who had, physical, like if it looked like they had a mental disability and you could tell. And back then we used the word retarded, which we don't use now. And that was, in my mind, like, oh, they are violent. And so that was really interesting for me. It wasn't until I went back to school, I went to college, obviously, got education there. And then I got immersed in a lot of self-contained classrooms. And so now obviously I have a whole different vision and understanding, of all of the sensory inputs and things like that. But that's a great question. Some people do.
So at the college level, were you studying disability related
Great question.
topics?
No, nope. I was going for business. I was supposed to get into the School of Business. And because I was not focusing on my studies enough, I got a temporary admission, and I had to get like one more A. And so I took a Latin basis class over the summer, and I got a B+. So I did not fulfill the requirements. And so I was like, okay, what am I going to do now? I was supposed to go in and do marketing. And I
Mm,
decided to go into the School of Communications, which looked like fun,
mm,
public speaking and broadcasting. So I ended up getting my bachelor's degree there and then started working for hotels. So I was working for Hyatt Hotels for a while, got married, and then had the absolute blessing to stay home with my children and raise them. So I stayed home for 10 years with my two
mm,
boys. And then my aunt, who is Colombian, she was working in inner city New York, and she said, Meme, you should become a speech teacher. And I said,
mm,
what is that? And by that point, we did have the internet. So I Googled it and I was like,
mm,
oh, this looks great. I love
mm.
talking and I could work the kids' schedules. And so then I put all my eggs in one basket and I took some leveling classes out here at ASU, Arizona State University, and I got to know the professors, and somehow I got in. So I was one of 35 students for the master's program out of 300 applications.
Mm.
And I ended up loving both the school age or the school setting and also the medical. So I did both tracks, and it was incredible. And so I got to do everything from, I'd say, preschool age, at
Uh-huh.
home, early feeding, all through school age. And then I also kept doing the medical side on the weekends. And so I've also worked with geriatrics, adults, trauma, like post-stroke, acute.
So
And
it's
then
speech language therapy. What's the right
exactly,
term?
speech language pathology. Yep.
Pathology. Okay.
Pathology, yeah. So the neurological side, swallowing, and then I loved AAC, which you brought up, which is alternative and augmentative communication, which is
Uh-huh.
AAC. That was incredible. It's technology. I love technology. And I got to work with a company in Santa Barbara on brain computer interface, which was absolutely amazing. So I had a little stint there. And then, since 2020, I've been full-time consulting. So being a bridge between companies and businesses and helping to connect all the dots, the pieces of clinical versus like product creation, marketing,
So
content.
so companies that are in the disability technology space, or what type of
Yeah.
companies?
Yep. And even it's a lot of blur, like even private practice or writing a book. And that's kind of where all of this came out. I also started my own podcast. I've been doing that for 7 years. It's called the Exceptional Leaders Podcast, spotlighting people like yourself who are amazing leaders in this space. And that was an amazing journey for me to just get one person and ask them all the questions I wanted. I'm a very curious person. And
Mm.
so I love that entrepreneurial journey of the ups and downs and, what kept you connected to your vision and where did you get the help. So after my first year, I realized, as this was back 7 years ago, not everybody was listening to podcasts. And I was like, I don't want people to miss these amazing stories. So I decided to do an anthology. I did not know what that word was when I started. I said, I just want to take everyone's stories and put them together in a book. And someone's like, that's an anthology, May. So I started with 15 other authors, and each one told one chapter, and it was
Okay.
beautiful. And so then that started the Becoming an Exceptional Leader book series. And then since then, I've now published a focus on AAC leaders, a focus on SLP leaders, and then also a focus on Asian Pacific Islander leaders with the connection of special education. And
Mhm.
each one of these books have had their own audience and their own connection. And I'm just amazed at the value because everybody loves storytelling. That's really how you can really connect with someone versus just a
Yeah.
bunch of bullets, right? And a bunch of directions. It's just been globally accepted, each of the books, and I'm just so excited. It's been such a blessing.
So consulting with companies, podcasting, writing books, um, connecting with leaders, and what was the genesis of the Exceptional Leaders Network that I know you've just launched?
Thank you. So about maybe 8 to 10 years ago, I started seeing these subscription memberships. And this is something where you pay, a certain amount every month, and then you get access to a group, a community, some type of learning system. And this is different than just a like one course webinar, or even if it's like a 3-day course. This is something where every month, you're tapping into the whoever the content creator is. And when it first started, I thought this is an amazing idea. And I had been creating other companies at that time. I had a learning management system for continuing education. We had one about reviewing apps. So I really understood the idea of aggregating and bringing communities together. And I
Hmm.
just kept watching this idea of subscription memberships, and I saw colleagues starting ones, like, for example, the medical SLP group. So it's a bunch of speech therapists who are, their expertise is in medical, and you pay a certain subscription price a month and you get access to them and all of these resources. That's fantastic. So I just kept thinking about it, but I
Hmm.
had imposter syndrome. And I think that's what a lot of us have, because, we come into this, my profession is a speech language pathologist. So I'm an expert in certain areas, for example, AAC, right? And I say expert, we're always learning, but I'm just saying, like,
Hmm.
that's my area of expertise, right? And then when you talk about subscription memberships, you now have to be creating content, providing information. And I never found the area of speech pathology that I felt that I was in excellence of, where people would say, oh, I go to May every month for this in, let's say,
Hmm.
AAC or this area. And that's because I do have ADHD. And so I feel like I have not deep dived into any one area because they all interest me, which has been a blessing and a curse, right?
We call that multi-passion.
Yes, yes, I call it my superpower,
Yeah.
but it can also take me back. Take me back. So I kept having this like imposter syndrome, like, I'd love to do a membership, but what is it that I would do? I'm not an expert. I'm not an expert. I kept kind of like telling myself that. And for your listeners, really the words that you say to yourself are so important. So if you tell yourself that you are or aren't something, you're going to believe that. And so for years, I believed that I wasn't an expert in anything and that I was a jack of all trades and master of none. But I finally started to understand that my value is really in connecting people and being a bridge to information, and that I don't need to know everything. And it wasn't until that clicked for me, Kirk, that I was able to
Uh-huh.
say, oh, I've been doing this the whole time, right? I've
Uh,
been bringing people together. I've been sharing information on how to grow your specific accessibility business or your inclusive business, or become a brand which people are not using. Like, so say you are somebody who you I'm thinking the word refer, but that's the word. You represent, that's the word. You represent
mhm,
a little known diagnosis, and you're telling the world about it. That's your brand. And so we don't know how to use these words. And so I've been working with people one-on-one and consulting with them, helping them to understand, like, you need to create a website, you need to get very succinct in your messaging, and you need to have a mailing list and all of these things. And I started to see, this is what I do, this is my value. And so, keeping with the exceptional leaders branding, which is what I've been doing with the
mhm,
podcast and then also with the book, I created the Exceptional Leaders Network. And this has even been a slow grow because I didn't know what it would be. And so
mhm,
last August, I sent an email out to like 100 of my closest people who I've been dealing with over the years in projects and podcasts and books. And I said, look, I really think that we need a community where we support each other, we uplift each other, and we support each other's offerings. And we get it. We get each other, right? We don't have to explain what does accessible mean, what does inclusive mean. And I said, I don't know what it's going to be, but I'd like to start it. And if you'd like to, be a part of this founders group, let's do this. And so I had 25 people who said yes. It was crazy. And we
mhm,
started each month coming together and saying, what kind of topics would be valuable, and I started creating agendas. Another thing that is my superpower, and it's really because I have ADHD, is I am very organized. And so I have created all of these strategies to make sure that I show up on time, that I get projects
mhm,
done on time. And so being very organized, I was able to kind of see, the pieces of what we were doing and how this could then grow into something much bigger. And so in the last couple of months now, we have all different presentations or webinars. They're like 45 minutes where they're deep dives into different areas of small business creation and strategy and maintenance. But we also have the time where the people that are on the live calls, they get to share. And that's been so valuable. And you were saying this too, Dr. Adams, that you got to meet Brooke Brown, who
yeah,
was former Arizona Miss Wheelchair.
yep.
Yeah. And so you start to see each other and you hear from each other what our successes are and our challenges are, and sharing tips. And that has just been priceless.
But the several experiences I've had so far with ELN, Exceptional Leaders Network, have been, it feels like entrepreneurship flavored with disability inclusion. Are those common themes? Is disability accessibility a unifying theme, or
Absolutely.
how would you describe kind of the framework that you're constructing under?
Right. So I always say it's people with and without disabilities
Uh-huh.
who are working towards accessibility and inclusion.
Okay, great. So that leads me to the next question of um, what types of folks do you think would benefit from joining the merry band of
Yes.
exceptional leaders?
Yeah. So I'm calling them or calling us like brand ambassadors. So now I talk about ADHD as much as I can, right? Because this is
Uh-huh.
now a diagnosis that I feel everybody should be in touch with. I received my diagnosis about 3 years ago now.
Mhm.
And honestly, it was very what's the word? Like I finally did it, but in the back of my mind, I think I've known I've had it for a while, right? But it didn't look like what a little boy looks like. So I wasn't really sure. And I feel that my messaging is that many women might have this diagnosis and they don't know because it just looks different for women. It presents different. And so I feel like me sharing this is really important. So this is me identifying with and I'm putting in quotes, a disability, but
Yeah.
this isn't it's not the only thing that I do. And so that's why the people that I feel that would be navigating towards, our exceptional leaders network are people who are coming out and they are, seeing the value of having a brand, having a platform, and the real piece is monetizing. And so you could be a speech therapist who has a private practice, or someone who has a disability who just wrote a book or created a product. Special education teachers, who have this great idea for a product or a software program.
Yeah.
Assisted technology developers. I mean, there are people all over the place, but we all come together because we are unified in this very, very special niche area
Hmm.
of disability, accessibility, inclusion. And
Yeah.
so it's been really amazing because people are now collaborating with each other and going, oh, I would love to have Dr. Adams on my podcast, or so and so is writing memoirs and I would love to have her help me
Hmm.
because she gets, my story and how it's different. And
Yeah.
it's been amazing.
I'd like to touch on a couple things. So ADHD, I often talk to people about disability inclusion, and there the terms I've been using are visible and non-visible disability. Um, when I walked into my first job interviews out of college with my long white cane and my Braille slate and stylus
Yeah.
notes in Braille, it was pretty obvious that I had an impairment, a visual impairment. Um, 70% or something of significant disabilities are again, I was using the term non-visible until about a week ago when I read a pretty reasoned argument that non-apparent is probably a better term. So would love to get your thoughts on apparent versus non-apparent disability a little bit, and any of the dynamics that you've observed as a person with a non-apparent disability. And then really curious about what, if anything, changed for you when you had a formal diagnosis. I think you said you kind of sensed there was something neurodiverse about yourself, but you did not have that diagnosis until about 3 years ago, which obviously you're an adult. So just really curious about what that felt like, and pros, cons, dynamics around that.
Excellent. Thank you. This has been a very interesting journey for me because it collided with doing my last book, which was Becoming an Exceptional API Leader, which is Asian Pacific Islander Leader. And I had just completed it's like an intake questionnaire. And as I was completing it, that's really where I knew that I was going to qualify because most of your symptoms will show up before the age of 12 when you're a girl. And so I had
Mm-hmm.
to really go back deep into my childhood. I'm now 50, I'll be 53 in May. And so going
Mm-hmm.
back and thinking about all of the questions that they asked, and some of them were like, oh, so for example, I always had bruises up and down my legs, Kirk, because I was bumping into things. I
Mm-hmm.
was constantly I didn't know where my legs were. And then my
Mm-hmm.
arms were like octopus arms. And my family actually joked that when I came to a table and there were glasses out on the table, that they would all grab their glass and hold it because inevitably I was going to knock something over.
Okay.
That was really interesting, right? So I
Yeah.
think about like these type of things, and then also I wouldn't stop talking. And my dad is 100% Chinese, would be like, shut up, would you stop talking? And then I would just shrink and just be like, I just wanted to say something, and he was like, you haven't stopped saying something since you were born. There's all these things that like the picture starts coming together for me. And that was wild. So as I'm answering these questions, I'm like, oh my gosh, that's me. Like, did you have trouble getting stuff done in school? I got a C every single semester in grade school up until seventh grade. It was like, I'll just pick spelling, English, history, science, each one, because I just couldn't get it together. I couldn't get my projects done. I wasn't organized. And back then, I don't know if you guys remember, like that was like latchkey kids days. Like my parents didn't help me with my homework. They didn't give
Right.
me, it's not the helicopter parenting that we had now.
Right.
So
Right.
literally I had to take care of everything myself.
Well, my parents asked, "Did you do your homework?"
Yeah, exactly.
That was it.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. There's a different kind of parenting. My
Yeah.
desk was a mess. My room was a mess. Like it was just a mess. And so going through it, like by the time I got done, I submitted the questionnaire and I just sat there crying. I was like,
Mm,
oh my gosh, I had ADHD all that time and
mm,
nobody helped
mm,
me and nobody
mm,
saw it. And then the
mm,
flip side of that is as I'm going through and writing the book together with Dr. Lily Chang, who is the founder of the Asian Pacific Islander Caucus for the American Speech Language Hearing Association, she taught me, and I think I always knew this, but she taught me about face. And this is a concept, miensa, that in most of the Asian cultures and even Southeast Asian cultures, that on the outside, you don't want public people to know what is going on for your family because it is embarrassing, because there's a certain level that you want to keep up in terms of reputation. And so it just permeates so many things, and it is so true. And so this is where perfectionism comes in, and secrecy. And if you notice, like the Asians don't like share, their family gossip, things like that. And I don't know if everybody knows, but this is actually like an unsaid thing. And so disability is actually a something that runs through this, where you don't want anyone to know that your child has a disability. I mean, you want them to think that your child's perfect. And so
mm,
any disabilities will absolutely be, hid under the table, and we're not going to talk
mm,
about that. And so when I was learning about that and then being able to look at my relationship with my dad, who's 100% Chinese from Hong Kong, now I realized that he was trying to discipline ADHD out of me.
mm,
I'm just going to let that hang there. Like by yelling at me, reprimanding me, taking things away, giving me negative feedback. Uh, it's not going to work. Obviously, we all know it's not going to work.
sure.
So that was amazing for me to be able to connect all that together. I
Yeah.
have a good relationship with my dad. I love him to death. He's the cutest little guy. And I've been able to see past, that this is what he thought was best parenting techniques. But it
Right.
was so damaging for me, Kirk, because I always feel like I'm not good enough. I'm not doing my
Right.
best work. I should be doing better. What is wrong with me? That was the other thing. My dad loved to ask rhetorical questions. What are you doing? I'm like a million things. I don't know.
Yeah.
So that was really huge for me. And then writing the book and working with all of the different people in the API community now, I understand that me telling this story is so important because other people go, oh my gosh, that's
Mm,
my story too. Whether it's just connecting with hiding a disability in the family or the family not accepting a neurological, a neurodiverse, let's say ADHD,
mhm.
ADD, autism, all of those. It's very hard for some families because of this Asian influence and the intersection of this culture. So that's really interesting.
Yeah. Well, obviously you figured out alternative techniques for yourself. You had this undiagnosed neurodiverse set of characteristics, but you obviously were very successful. One of 35 people out of 300 to get into your master's program and becoming a speech language pathologist, podcasting and writing books and things from I guess probably from a psychosocial standpoint, super helpful to have a diagnosis. But then from a practical standpoint, are there tools or techniques that you've come to embrace since the diagnosis that have been helpful to you?
Yes. So I set up to eighth grade. I got a C, but then there
Yeah.
was a high school that I wanted to go to, and it was a private high school. And I had gone to private school too, but I wanted this high school. And my parents said, you have to get straight A's if you're going to go to this high school. We know you can do it. We don't know what your problem is, but in order to stay in this high school, you have to get straight A's. And so, again, no one told me how. So I had to
Mm-hmm.
develop my own strategies, and that's really the word. And so I had my
Mm-hmm.
trapper keeper, my calendar, my note cards. I
Mm-hmm.
had to come up with all of these ways to keep myself organized, and that
Yeah.
has stayed with me almost to a fault because I'm OCD on a lot of things now, where it's like, oh my God, this has to be like this, or I got to be packed like 3 days in advance and I got to get all my vitamins together a month in advance. It's a
Mm-hmm.
little too much.
Yeah.
But so that's like the old school way. And then now with technology, which was what your question was, I am on fire because I've got like my phone is beeping, my watch is vibrating, like you name it, I got things going on to keep me
Mm-hmm.
going. And I still will miss a meeting, believe it or not.
Yeah. Happens to the best.
Yes, yes. And then AI. Oh my gosh, AI is like, it's like I can't even I can't even explain. Like I can maybe 5x what my productivity is
Uh-huh.
on a daily basis now with AI.
What are some of the common things you use AI for?
So research is really important. So I do a lot of presentations now, and I'm kind of doing meta presentations because it's AI presentations, right? How to use it as a speech language pathologist, how to use it as a small
Mm.
business owner. And I actually do a lot of this research using all of the AI tools. I also am loving agentic AI, which is that you can have, there's a software program, there's a couple now where you have 4 or 5 different agents and they
Mm-hmm.
do different things. So one does content writing, one does email writing, one does personal development, and they all connect with each other. So you don't have to have like one space for one topic. So that's just really powerful. I love those two things. And then ChatGPT is changing all the time. Here we are in
Yeah.
2025, and we're, just at the surface of what it can do. It's constantly updating.
And back to the parent versus non-apparent disabilities. Um, Thinking about speech and, obviously Brooke on Monday when she was making her presentation using AAC, augmented and alternative.
Yes.
Okay. Communications. So it was pretty clear to me before I knew she was Miss Wheelchair Arizona. Hearing the way she presented, I was as a blind person, it was apparent to me that she has an impairment. And I want to take just a minute and talk about impairment and disability. So, I have a visual impairment. I'm totally blind. Some people have hearing impairments, mobility impairments, cognitive impairments, but impairment does not equal disability. I really like to talk about that a lot, especially with employers. And I use two simple examples. One is if I'm leading a meeting and I am at the conference table and I have my agenda in Braille and my committee reports and my budget in Braille. I can read Braille as well as a sighted person could read print. So I'm not in a disabling situation then, even though my visual impairment is constant. However, if I sit down at the conference table and you hand me a stack of print materials, my visual impairment does not fit with that built environment of print. So I am in a disabling situation. So I talk a lot about trying to minimize the disabling situations for people with impairments and to have social, digital, and built environments that lessen the instances of disabling situations. So I talk about that, and then often if I'm in a big crowd, I'll say, and this May you would clap. I'll say if you're 5 feet tall or shorter, clap, and
Yes,
someone will
that's
clap.
me.
And I'll say, well, if you walk into a room and there's a package on a shelf that's 8 feet off the ground, your characteristic of your height does not fit with the built environment of that high shelf. So you're going to have to be creative. You're going to have to get a tool, like a step stool, or you're going to have to find a teammate taller than you and create a team in order. And then you may want to build a lower shelf so the situation doesn't happen again. So those are super simplistic examples, but as far as the fit between people with impairments in speech and the fit with our world. I I'd love to just hear some of your top of mind reflections about that, since that's an area of expertise for you. It's not for me, but I'm really obviously interested in anyone with characteristics that fall outside the norm and how we can be inclusive of everybody. Everybody, I say.
Excellent. You're going to love this. So I had the honor of being able to nominate some people for our recent Arizona State Speech and Hearing Association annual conference. And it just happened in April. And I nominated John Gomez, who's a good friend of mine, but also the producer of When I Stutter. And it's now an internationally recognized documentary on adults who stutter.
Mm,
And he published this, I think, back in 2018. And it was after like 4 or 5 years of interviewing and filming adults all around the country. And he is one of the pioneers of shifting speech language pathology to whole person centered
mm,
versus fixing someone who stutters. And this is a non-apparent impairment. So
mm,
that actually fits perfectly into, what you're talking about. And
mm,
in the film, it's fantastic because people talk about trying all different types of therapies. Like even the one that is like, I can't remember what's called, the MDR, I think, or something, like it echoes back to them what they say. And that actually works for a little while, but then the brain just reconfigures and goes back
mm,
to its initial states. It's amazing. And then also like where all these strategies the speech therapist teaches the client to stop talking, start again, use onboarding strategies. And they were just saying like how limiting it was and how it affected their self-confidence and so many things. It was actually negative for some people, and it made the profession to have to take a look at, is our place that we want to fix people so that they don't have this impairment anymore, or
uh-huh,
are we just trying to get people to the point where they are happy and they are communicating? And that's always been what I fall back on in the field, is it doesn't matter what form of communication you're using, it's that you are effectively communicating. And you're communicating with another person, with your pet, it could be with just somebody that can, or something
mhm,
that can accept it. But there's also a lot of controversy that if you have an AAC device, you have to use the device. You have to press
mm,
this symbol versus just using your hands. Why can't you
mm,
just gesture by, you know?
mm,
Or vocalize, and that's all you can get, but that means by, or that's closest to it. We
mhm,
also find that there's people who, and then this is Brooke, she cannot um, enunciate all of the sounds. And so she has helpers, and that her helper was not available for our session the other day, but they can interpret her
mm.
vocalizations, and it's amazing. And so that person has become her assistive technology, right? To help.
Yes,
Yes,
yes.
yes.
Um, you said the documentarian, did you say John Gomez? Did
John
I get that
Gomez,
right?
yeah.
So, and whole person? What was
Whole
the
person centered. Yeah,
whole
that's
person center? Could you just talk a little bit more about that? What that means, the whole
yes.
person?
So an example is when I had a child, he was in fifth grade, and he kept coming in. He had a stutter. He'd come in, he'd say, "Miss Chan, I don't want to leave my class. I'm working on a science project, or we're just doing
Mm-hmm,
something." And I'd say, "Okay, but let's just go through this." And as he's telling me, he's experiencing moments of stuttering, and he's
mm-hmm,
like, "I don't need the speech therapy." And so I went in and observed him, which is part of our responsibility, is to observe
mm-hmm,
him with his peers, in the classroom. And I said, this kid's doing great. He's
mm-hmm,
not really impacted, and he was getting good grades. And so those are the two markers that we can attach our speech therapy to in the school setting, is that, maybe socialization is impeding his ability to participate in group activities. And then that affects
mm-hmm.
him academically. So it always has to affect academics. So this was years ago, before we had this whole person centered. And
Yeah.
I had his family come in, and he's only in fifth grade. And every year you have
Mm-hmm.
an IEP, the
Yep.
individual education process meeting. And I had him come to it. And I said, Johnny, how do you feel about speech therapy? He's like, it's a waste of my time. I don't want to be there. Yeah. And I said, okay, well, how do you feel about your grades? He's like, I don't know. I think I'm doing great. I don't have any
Uh,
problems. We asked the teacher says he's doing great. Does he have any issues with, interacting with peers? Any self-confidence issues?
mm,
None, none, none. He wants to stop speech therapy. The parents do not want him to stop speech therapy.
mm-hmm,
And so this was something that took me at least 2 years to get him off of my caseload. And I
mm,
had reduced him down to just 1 hour a month, reduced him to
Hmm.
consultation to the point where I could get him off of a full IEP and he could be out
Hmm.
with the general kids. And so that's what whole person centered is that
Okay.
is this person communicating or being able to live at the level where they feel that they are
Right.
effective.
Right. Are they thriving
Exactly.
by their own their own definition of what thriving is?
That's
Right.
right. Yep.
So let's talk about the IEP just for a second. If there's a parent, the child with a disability, a child with an impairment, listening to this, the individual education plan or individual education process document is super, super important. Your child is entitled to that. Um, for blind kids, there's something called the expanded core curriculum, which the American Foundation for the Blind and Dr. Phil Hatland developed many years ago. And it's the good news as blind kids get at some point. And say, hey, blind kid, you got to learn everything the sighted kids learn and 9 more things,
Mm.
which is orientation and mobility, how to travel confidently and safely with a long weight cane, braille if that's appropriate, um, assistive technology, and advocacy. You need to learn how to advocate for yourself, and I did not. I was not really taught that very well. I have some terrible stories about how not being able to advocate for myself negatively impacted my life. But having your child in those IEP meetings from kindergarten on is really important. They can give feedback and input into the process as developmentally appropriate. They can say what they like and don't like when they're really little. And as they get older, they can really start being a leader in those settings. Um, I can remember being at a National Federation of the Blind of Washington meeting talking about IEPs. And one of the moms said, if I walked in there and there were 6 people and me, there were 6 experts and they were telling me what was best for my kid. And I said, I'm not prepared. I didn't realize what this is going to be. I need to reschedule. And she said, I came back with 7 people. um, it still chokes me up because she said, if we have to have it, this IEP meeting in the gym, that's where we're going to have it, just so I can have enough support to um, achieve for my child what I need to achieve for my child. So the IEP is super important. Sounds like you've been involved in quite a number of those, Mai Ling. So I just want to put that out there. And I know that either one of us would be happy, delighted to talk to anyone who's with us live today or viewing the recording about any or all of this. So let's tell people how they can get in touch with us. And then I'd love, Mai Ling, to hear a little about your vision for the future of the Exceptional Leaders Network. So how can people best get in touch with you?
Well, it's kind of amazing. My name, Mai Ling Chan, is pretty popular in China,
It
but
is.
I was able to actually land mailingchan.com, which is
All
why.
right.
So please feel free to reach out to me at mlc@mailingchan.com. You can also find me at LinkedIn at Mailing Chan and Instagram at Mailing Chan.
Great. And for me, my name is not quite as common, but I was able to get drkirkadams.com. So drkirkadams.com or Kirk Adams PhD on LinkedIn. And I spend my day trying to move inclusion of people with disabilities forward in all kinds of ways, small and large, serious and fun. So if it's something that you're interested in talking about with either one of us, I know Mai Ling, I'm going to speak for you. We would welcome a conversation um, with anyone out there who wants to help move things forward for the good of the order. But before we open it up for any questions from the people with us here today, I'd love to hear a few minutes about your vision for ELN. I know it started. I joined it. I've been to a couple of meetings. Had a couple great experiences with your guest speakers. And as you mentioned earlier, you and I are working through the accessibility issues with the membership platform that you're using. And we've got the vendor involved now, which is what you need to do. And so we're doing those things that in the ELN world will make things more accessible for everybody. So where do you want to see things go?
Well, we have to talk about the space that we're in right now and how it's being affected by the change in the federal programs.
Yeah.
The obliteration of DEI programs and the trickle down reduction in funding for services. So many people like us are disability advocates, speech therapists, and just people in this community. We're starting to look for independent paths to creating impact. What are some other ways
Mhm.
that we can do this and connect with people and also generate sustainable income? And that's the piece that I haven't been talking about for years. It's that we need to make money. And with that money, we can help more people, we can be more impactful. And so that's where I see the ELN network really coming together is I think we're small but mighty right now, but we aren't going anywhere. And we're just going to continue to grow as people like you, our listeners, are listening and finding out that there is support here from people who get what you are working on. And that's really hard because I think in this time, again, I talk about inclusivity, accessibility. This is becoming non-negotiable, for businesses. They can take away the DEI programs, but the requirements are always going to be there. And we need to continue to self-advocate. And if, we know together we are stronger, that's where I see the Exceptional Leaders Network growing together. I like to say this is we need to look to our left and right and to lift each other up. And I feel that that is where the Exceptional Leaders Network is placed.
Wonderful. And that does lead me to just reiterate the laws are still the laws. The Americans with Disability Act is still the law. Section 504, 508, EEOC, there's still opportunity. There's still the Civil Rights Act. There's still the laws. And I just say keep the faith and like you just said, Mei Ling, be innovative and gather together in community. And let's look for creative solutions as groups of people who care. Um, anyone with us today who would like to ask a question? I don't like chat because I just hear Jaws read it. So if you just want to unmute and ask a question, feel free.
I'm sorry, I thought I was unmuted already. There we go. All
Yeah.
right. So, Kirk, Mei Ling, it's always a pleasure to be with you. Amazing stories. Mei Ling, I really appreciated some of the uh, insights on how you were raised, and it really struck home to me. So, thank you for sharing that. One of the questions that I would really love to get both of you to weigh in on. There is a there because of what's happening right now and some of the things that we're seeing happening at the federal level. One of the things that I've been hearing from some of my colleagues who have disabilities, whether that's blind or autism or other things, is I don't feel comfortable advocating for myself right now. Or I get shut down when I'm asking for help. And there's this intimidation piece that seems to be happening, that I have to own for you. I don't really understand, because when someone tries to intimidate me to shut up, that usually makes me talk louder, right? And I'm comfortable with that, but not everybody is like me.
Right.
And so I'm really curious if you have um, any strategies either that those people might be able to tap into who aren't feeling comfortable in advocating for
Mm-hmm.
themselves right now, or quite honestly, if you got any advice for me who's trying to support them and and on that journey, right? And
Yeah.
trying to be both understanding and at the same time push for, you got to advocate, you can't let them shut you down. And so I
Right.
hope that that's
Yeah.
formed.
Uh, well, my top of mind answer is there's a tolerance for mean-spiritedness and discourteousness that's happening in our society right now, and I think that's not a big surprise. I think certain people who, for whatever reason, feel aggrieved, are feeling pretty emboldened to speak cruelly to other people. And I think it's just important to acknowledge that people have been given permission to be pretty rude. I think we've always had to choose our battles, our advocacy battles, and there's such a thing as compassion fatigue. You can't try to take every microaggression as a teachable moment. You know, when I'm in the TSA line with my wife and they say, can I see his ID? You know, do I choose to just hand them my ID, or am I going to take a moment to educate them that they should speak to me directly? So sometimes I say, you can speak to me directly. Sometimes I just hand the ID. Super small example. I think my default answer to all of this stuff is community. You know, it's tough to do all this stuff alone, and don't put yourself through it. You can join a formal structure group like Exceptional Leaders Network, or you can find kindred spirits, and it's so much easier to find kindred spirits now. I grew up in teeny towns in the Pacific Northwest, always the only blind kid in my schools. Never met a blind adult until well into my 20s, um, who was a successful, thriving person. Then wasn't taught advocacy skills, but with the search tools we have today, the groups, the American Council of the Blind has chapters, National Federation of the Blind has chapters. There are recreational groups around people with various impairments. Use a search engine and put in some terms and find some folks. I know there's the common find your tribe is a little bit of a buzz phrase nowadays, but don't go it alone. Find someone that you can talk to about it, who has some shared experience that you have some commonality with. And those are my top of mind thoughts. Mai Ling?
Yeah, I have a really interesting experience. I had the opportunity to present about accessibility to small business owners. And at the end of it, one of the participants said, you know, I don't understand why we have to make screen readers available for everyone. If I have an employee and they need something, why don't they just tell me? Why do I have to spend all this money to make it available for all the employees and maybe there's only 1% that need it? And I was like, I just stood here talking to you for an hour about how important it was. And you have the audacity and ignorance to stand up and say that. I was shocked. So I just want to
Yeah,
give you that perspective is people just don't get it.
yeah.
So what I do tell people, and this is to answer your question, Jeremy, is to say these are the needs that I have, and this is what I need. And so specifically saying I need a JAWS or whatever the screen reader is that you like, this is what I need. You know, I am vertically challenged and I need to have, like I do, I have a child's chair, a child-sized chair, so that I can fit, you know, anatomically at my desk. I need this, like making that list of things and sharing those. Now, I don't know if you want to share that in the interview, you know, giving them these are all the things that I'm going to need, but I have no problem with saying, and this is from the other side, so I am still like on that employee side, but as a consultant, I do offer, I have ADHD and I'm using all of these tools and strategies, but if I don't show up for a meeting, feel free to ping me, you know, just letting them know I'm okay with that. You know, text me, email me, whatever that is. If I'm late for something, don't think that, you know, that I remembered or something. And most of the time they don't have to do that. I just want you guys to know, because that's the other thing is you don't know, do you want to be telling people these, you know, these issues that you might be having, and then they don't want to work with you. But if you know yourself and, you know, you are true to your word, of course, you're going to try to show up, you know, the best that you can. And
Yeah.
so I don't think there's an issue with sharing earlier, you know, in these conversations with employers, what your needs are and, you know, how you are working through them and what you need to be able to produce, you know, at your best level.
Yeah. As far as that, disclosing your disability and the employment journey, I've tried both strategies, not revealing until the last minute when I walk into the in-person interview, which didn't go well for me, or disclosing up front, again, my cover letter, and that even went worse. But I think now that I'm older and wiser, the person may not legally be able to ask you about your disability, but if you have one, it's a great strategy to talk about it and talk about how it's a strength, how you've developed strengths, how you have unique capabilities and unique experiences because of it, and how it will not create problems for the employer. It's going to bring valuable assets to the table for the employer. And you might say, hey, I got my master's in such and such, and I use this, this, and this, and that's the exact same tools I'll use to do this job. And the vocational rehabilitation system will pay for it. Or Mai Ling may say, you notice I'm a short person. All I need is a chair. It's not going to cost any. Small chair doesn't cost any more than a big chair. All I need is a small chair. So you might think about acknowledging it and putting it in terms of strengths. I was counseling or meeting with some high school kids last summer, and there was a really sharp young cat. He was applying for jobs. He's 18 years old, lived in a small town in Eastern Washington. I went to college in a small town in Eastern Washington. So I said, there's going to be 100 kids applying for this job, and they're going to all have the exact same thing on their resume. But I will guarantee you that you have something unique that they don't have. So I don't know what it is. Maybe you babysat your younger siblings. Maybe you did chores on the farm. Maybe you did a really cool science project as a blind person. But illustrate your differences, stand out, and be proud. With that, Mai Ling, I'm going to have to bid you adieu until next time. It's been this hour flew by, and I greatly appreciate you being here today.
Thank you. This was way too much fun, and I don't want to
Okay.
go.
All right. We'll do another hour. Let's do another hour in the fall. See how far you've gotten with Exceptional Leaders Network.
Beautiful.
And everybody join. It's fun. See you next month, the final Thursday in May at the same time, 11 Pacific, for my monthly live stream webinar, Supercharge Your Bottom Line Through Disability Inclusion. Have a great day, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you.